Yo, what's up? This is Jay Dennis, and we are back with another Ranked and Reviewed. And today we're doing a classic deathcore band that I've been meaning to do for a while because they just put out their last album, at least in the last few months, I believe. I've just been a busy beaver, But here I am. I'm going to try to get back into these videos a bit more often, so thank you guys for bearing with me. Chelsea GRIN, man. Kind of the part of the trifecta of cringe bands that I initially hated, but then really grew to like. That trifecta, by the way, is Chelsea GRIN, Amur, and Attila. All bands that I was introduced to either in 2010 or something, maybe Amur a little sooner, where I was just like, ugh, these vocals are garbage, or ugh, the cringe. And they seemed kind of trendy at the time, but eventually they grew on me, and now I like stuff from all of them. Definitely Amur the most, Chelsea GRIN, and Attila's kind of meh to me now, but still got some good songs. But this video is about Chelsea GRIN, and I'm going to do something different today. This won't be the first video where I've included EPs, but I'm going to just kind of lump the EPs in with the ranking, because frankly the spread between the 7 studio albums and 2 EPs isn't particularly huge, unless we're talking about my favorites, the top and the bottom, but everything in the middle is pretty tight, pretty tight. So, and then I'm going to close off with my top 10. But I really enjoy this band. I think Alex Kohler is a excellent vocalist, and I think that the last couple of albums with, what's his name, Tom Barber, he's a fucking monster as well. So I'm excited to talk about these. And the ranking came out a bit differently than I thought it would. I'm pretty familiar with all their work. I've been listening to all their stuff for the most part since it's come out. And been listening to their last 2, which were technically a double album, but 2 separate releases, so I'm going to rank them separately. And Tom Barber's been hitting the vocalist spot pretty well, in my opinion. Definitely live. But yeah, let's fucking get started, man. At the bottom spot, which, like a lot of other bands, I find value and pretty much enjoy every album, but their bottom spot easily is Self-Inflicted. The one redeeming part of this album is it probably has like the best production. I love the way the guitars and drums are mixed. The vocals sound great. It's Alex's last album. He sounds great. The issue is it's just a very boring album. There's really no hooks. There's really no standout tracks. There are some good riffs and like Four Horsemen strung out, but it's not until you get to the very end of the album with Never Forever that you get any type of real guitar leads or solo. So it's kind of a solid like B- album. Like there's like no bad tracks, but some of their weakest tracks are on here, and none of my top 10 songs are on this album. But songs that are worth listening to: Four Horsemen, Strung Out, maybe Skin Deep or the first track, Welcome Back. But forgettable album. And it was 2016 when I don't know if a lot of even like metalcore and deathcore bands were trying to like fuck with new metal, and maybe they just kind of stripped down the sound a little bit and tried to make it more rhythm based, but it's just a little boring, but it's still worth a listen if you're a fan. Next up at the number 9 spot, we have, wait, did I get it backwards? Was it? Fuck. No, I thought it was. Oh no, this is not a good look. This is not a good look. Oh wait, I got it right. Okay. Next up, Suffer in Heaven, newest album. This is actually a pretty decent step up though from from the 9 spot to the 8 spot. Suffer in Heaven is definitely easier to listen to than Self-Inflicted because there's a few more higher points. One of my top 10 favorite tracks are on this album. That's Fathomless Maw. That's just a fucking nasty, menacing song. It's just got that guitar riff that just complements the vocal hooks perfectly. And the rest of the album, aside from Soul Slave and maybe a solid guitar solo and Path to Suffering, a little bit of Mind to God, The Mind of God, sorry. But beyond that, 8-track album. Here's the thing with the double album. They're both like 27 minutes. They should technically be a full album, but they're 2 separate releases, so I'm ranking them separately. So individually, Suffer in Heaven is probably the weaker half because there's less material, but Tom Barber still sounds great. It's just the songs are getting a little repetitive. It's getting a little harder to sound original and fun in the deathcore genre without getting a bit more extreme on some of the guitar techniques, but if every song had even a modicum of what Fathomless Maw did, this would easily be their best album. But other than that, kind of an inconsistent album, but it has its high points, and for a 27-minute runtime, it's definitely worth listening to. So, like I said, Tom's doing great, but this is just towards the bottom. Next up at the number 7 spot, we have another Tom album, and that is Eternal Nightmare, which, what I liked about this album, and this album's only marginally better than Suffer in Heaven, Eternal Nightmare was produced by Joshua Travis, which, one of the great signals of, like, being like an original musician and like just having like your place, not just in the music in general, but just like metal music, is can you fucking tell who had their hand on this album? You can tell if Adam Deutschwich from Killswitch produced an album. You could tell if Ross Robinson produced an album. You could tell if Terry Date or Rick Rubin produced an album. Joshua Travis, I guess he's in the production game now, and I might have missed that. These definitely sound like riffs he would have at least had an opinion on. So it's a fun album to listen to. It's just kind of like Suffer in Heaven. It's got some high points, but other than that, not a lot of vocal hooks or anything super memorable. But Dead Rose is an awesome opener. See You Soon is one of the catchiest, heaviest guitar riff intros I've ever heard. I fucking love that song. Hostage, another great song. But other than that, not a whole lot to write home about. 37-minute runtime. Solid album. Like I said, every Chelsea Grin album is solid to listen to at least once from front to back. It's just, what are your preferences and what do your criteria for a solid album? I like a little bit of diversity and I like some hooks. Or if it has an identity and a solid concept piece, I want it to be like banging. I don't want it to be derivative or drawn out or too repetitive. But it's kind of hard to do that again in like the death metal, deathcore sound when so much of this stuff has kind of been fleshed out and it's a little hard to be creative. Tom Barber is the superior vocalist. It's just so far, the albums that have come out may or may not be on the lower end purely because of the sign of the times or just the type of quote-unquote deathcore that was coming out. Next up, we have an EP. It's their self-titled EP. This is what started everything. 2008, right? Yeah, 2008. They put out this EP, Chelsea Grin, with a disturbing album cover. Great band name, great album artwork. Coming out with a fucking hot song like Kruka Banger. It's a freaking Chelsea Grin classic. And then you got a couple songs that ended up making it onto the first album. You got Shane Strokes, however the fuck you say it, and Elysium, right? No. I could have swore there was at least 2 tracks on here that made it, but maybe I'm smoking something. Not a whole lot to say. It's a 15-minute EP. It's fun to listen to, easy to listen to. If you want a nice, raw deathcore album from the late 2000s, you can't mess with this one. It just opens with its best foot, and then Shane Strokes, and then other than that, just pretty, otherwise, solidly decent tracks. Not much else to say about it, except that it does sound a bit more raw. It sounds like Alex is a bit more, in a good way, disgusting with the vocals, and I kind of like that, depending on what you're listening to. All right, at the very middle of the ranking, we have, I'm a little surprised by this, but Ashes to Ashes. Their longest album, their only album with one of the greatest modern metal guitar players, probably just even modern guitarist in general, Jason Richardson. Ashes to Ashes was the follow-up, the full-length follow-up to the EP Evolve. And my only complaint about Ashes to Ashes is it's too fucking long. The average Chelsea Grin album is like 40 minutes long. They didn't need to do 14 tracks here. 15, I guess, if you count the 2-part interlude, which should have just been 1 part instrumental. You know, Ashes to Ashes, dust to just Ashes and then ... to Ashes. Should have just been 1 song. 14 tracks, they could easily junk 3 or 4 of them and have probably their best album, because it's otherwise a very well written. It's the best in terms of like lead guitar work, because you got fucking Jason Richardson on there. What Jason Richardson may or may not struggle with, at least on this album, because he certainly hasn't struggled with it on other albums that he's been, or other bands he's been a part of. It's the riffs. Just the chuggy drop G shit. I was talking to my friend about this last night. If you're gonna chug and drop G, you need to have some good complementing dynamic riffs in between the chugs, and you need to not just overcompensate with insane technical leads that are fun to listen to, but you also need to have good production. You need to have a little bit less of a choppy staccato sound if you're chugging and drop G, because it's such a low tuning. Even if you're playing on a guitar that can accommodate that low tuning, it's still a pretty sludgy tuning. So if you just sound like you just sound all choppy, the riffs just get boring and repetitive. Songs that could have easily been cut out from this album, which would have boosted the score, were Angels Shall Sin, Cheers to Us. Even though I think it's a single, I would have gotten rid of Sell Out. And we'll just leave it there. We'll just mix those 3 songs, and you would have had like a B+ album instead of like a mid B album, which sticks it right in the middle. Too much fluff, man. This could have been a solid mid 40-minute, maybe 50-minute album, which has otherwise insane songs like Pledge of Allegiance, where there's like even some like aggressive clean vocals on there. I love that. Morte Eterna, amazing clean intro. Best song on the album. Illuminate, heavy as fuck. I love it. Undying, which is just a fucking masterpiece in my opinion. Definitely one of their best songs. So Jason Richardson's leads definitely carry a lot of it. Alex sounds perfectly fine on this album. It's just a little bit of the production's a little bit dry on the rhythm side. Not a lot of bass, a lot of treble. And again, some of the chugs just sounding a little too compressed, if I'm even using the right terminology. And just too much fluff. But otherwise, Ashes to Ashes is a solid album if you strip away the filler songs and you have otherwise like a really good listening experience. Ashes to Ashes, that instrumental 2 tracks for some reason, is awesome to listen to. It's a nice little palate cleanser. It just didn't need to be into 2 tracks. And then I forget if Dust to Dust kind of sounds like a sequel to Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So that was a nice little way to end off their one major studio album with Jason Richardson. Man, it is hard to do these rankings without making them 20 plus minutes, but I'm not just ranking them, I'm kind of reviewing them too, so you guys know what you're here for. All right, now we're on to the top 4. Next up, we have their second to newest album, Suffer in Hell. So finally, a Tom Barber album that's a little higher up. I think that's his name, Tom Barber. Origin of Sin, great opening track. This is, Suffer in Hell is kind of like Self-Inflicted, where it's just a pretty solid album from front to back with no major standout tracks, but the average score of the songs are solid, are higher. So if you want just a nice solid, like, this might be a bit of a stretch, but the way Slayer's Rain and Blood album was described as like a thrash metal half-hour tour through hell, you could basically say Suffer in Hell is the same thing, except, modern deathcore. It's almost a half hour of power, Sum 41 now, half hour of power of pure modern deathcore heaviness that doesn't slip. There's no weak tracks on this album. Origin of Sin, the best tracks are the Isness. That's just an evil song, and I love it. And then Morning Hymn. I think it's Forever Bloom that has Trevor Sternad from Black Dahlia Murder, rest in peace. And the music video, albeit a little purposely cheesy at times, they have a nice little part of that music video where they pay homage to him, where I think they like kneel during Trevor's vocal part, because unfortunately he wasn't able to be in the video. So really cool crossover there. Suffer in Hell is a great, otherwise great album. Again, maybe Suffer in Hell and Suffer in Heaven, maybe it was a good business move to do 2 separate releases, because if you put them both together, it might have been like Ashes to Ashes, where it might have just been a little fluffy. You would have had 16 tracks where maybe 4 of them wouldn't have been necessary. But yeah, Suffer in Hell is definitely the better of the double release that they have done in the last year. And so far, the best album they've done with Tom. All right, we're getting into the top tier shit now. Number 3. This is where I'm starting to get surprised again. My Damnation. This was one of my first experiences of listening to Chelsea Grin. And the first time I fucking heard Alex's vocals on this album, I vomited. I shat myself. I sharted. I projectile vomited and sharted at Panera Bread. And I'm not welcome there anymore. Nah, that was before I figured out he sustained a pretty brutal jaw injury. I think somebody unintentionally sucker punched or donkey kicked him or something because he fell into the pit. At least that's what I read. But anyway, had to learn to scream all over again, and you could basically tell the fucking pain in his voice as he's learning to use his tools again. But there's something that interesting about that sound that kind of grew on me. Like I don't hate his vocals on that album anymore. In terms of music, it's a slightly more technical, more fleshed out version of Desolation of Eden. It's just, again, all these albums are just kind of marginally better than each other at this point, even though My Damnation is definitely much better than Self-Inflicted. But just as we work our way up the list, they're just kind of minor improvements. They're not like shitting on each other. It's not like we have an F album and then a B album. They're all at least B minus, mid B, and then my favorite album is A minus. My Damnation, though, there's just something evil about the way he sounds, and I love it. The music is still solid. It's still like traditional deathcore. Calling in Silence has just really fun melodic riffs that I love. Last Breath is the best song on the album, and then All Hail the Fallen King with Phil Bozeman sounds fucking incredible. I forget the guy's name or what band he's in, but like Nate something is in Calling in Silence. Fuck, I may as well do the guy some justice. Let's see. Calling. I don't remember what band he's in, but it's Nate Johnson. I looked it up recently, but you guys can look for yourself. Great feature in Calling in Silence. Everlasting Sleep. It's just an evil sounding album. It's one of those things where your opinion can change over time. And yeah, initially I thought it was turbo cringe. I thought it sounded horrible. But once you kind of get some perspective and learn to like the rest of their stuff, you realize, oh, for the time, this is actually pretty banging. So My Damnation easily sits with the number 3 spot pretty comfortably. Next up, we have their best album, which is Desolation of Eden. The one that pretty much started it all in terms of studio albums. Like I said, slightly less fleshed out musically version of My Damnation, kind of like a nice prelude. This is just a classic deathcore album. When you think classic deathcore, you think like The Cleansing from Suicide Silence. You think of This Is Exile or Somatic Defilement from Whitechapel. Maybe you think of Job for a Cowboy's Doom EP before Job for a Cowboy went full death metal. And I know that there's plenty of others that are more underground, but I'm talking about the mainstream deathcore. Those are gateway albums. This is a gateway album too. The outro, just the song Desolation of Eden, as well as that outro, just those harmonized guitars are just fucking nasty. I love them. You got re-recorded better versions of Shane Strokes. The original version of The Human Condition, which still sounds solid. I'm alluding to something here in a second. Other great song is Cast from Perfection. My only complaint about Desolation of Eden, and it is very much a nitpick, in terms of repetitiveness, they use the same fucking pinch harmonic in like every song. Dun 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 dun. Like they use the pinch harmonics almost sound kind of comical when you listen to them. Like they don't sound like nasty or menacing or. I'm not playing on the guitar. I'm using my voice. It got a little repetitive on the pinch harmonics. The riffs. I play guitar, so I kind of can forecast what type of fucking technique is going to come. And I've been writing metal music a long time, so it is a little predictable. But for 2010, it's still pretty solid, and I love listening to it. And it's an awesome 35-minute treat. Great album to work out to. Great album to listen to. Alex sounds great. The music is fun. The drop A riffs are insane. And I don't really have any other complaints. I think Desolation of Eden is easily their best studio album. It's a classic deathcore album, and it still holds up. And I use it as a bit of inspiration for if I ever want to try to recreate or do something like that in my own music. but we haven't talked about something yet, and that is absolutely... Wait, hold on a sec. That is the EP that really, really, really got me into appreciating Chelsea Grin in the first place, and that is the 2012 Evolve EP. Now, a lot of people would say, oh, this is where they took a shit because they introduced clean vocals. Evolve is a fucking masterpiece. It is 5 damn near flawless songs. I'm not talking about 10 out of 10 songs, but like I gave this album a 9 out of 10. I don't dish out the nines that often. Hell, I've only dished out 1 or 2 10s in my life, but the nines are pretty uncommon as well. Evolve opens with the weakest track, Second Coming, but then it fucking skyrockets in quality, in my opinion, with Lilith. I don't care if it sounds kind of corny when he's like, my lips turn out to blue. I wrote this song just for you. I don't fucking care, man. I think it's a great song. And the chorus, the fucking chorus. I love that chorus. I also have a lot of good memories to that song. I was in fucking Denmark when the song dropped. I watched the Visualizer music video like 1,000 times on YouTube. So definitely have a lot of sentimental value to this album, as well as the single Lilith. You got just Jason Richardson playing like really good fucking riffs, groovier riffs than on Ashes to Ashes, on songs like Shot, or just that opening deathcore like menacing song with Confession, with like the pre-chorus, the shredding it does. You want a fucking top tier Chelsea Grin song? Listen to Confession. Just that opening, the pre-chorus, you can't fuck with it. And then, like I said, all the lead guitar work on this album is just top tier. It's what Ashes to Ashes could have been. It was the prelude to Ashes, but it was done better. No fat, no waste, just a perfect 23-minute EP. Don't Ask, Don't Tell, of course, is also iconic. Like, people don't like that Chelsea Grin got a bit more melodic here and Alex did some clean vocals. They sound fucking great on this album. They, like, you can't fuck with any aspect of this album unless you're, like, nitpicking, like I do sometimes. And that's what's fun about these videos. All right, so let's go ahead and recap with all the 7 studio albums and 2 EPs we have from least favorite to most favorite. Self-Inflicted, Suffer in Heaven, Eternal Nightmare, self-titled EP, Ashes to Ashes, Suffer in Hell, My Damnation, Desolation of Eden, and their best is, in my opinion, the Evolve EP. Just mwah. Top 10 Chelsea Grin songs, really in no particular order, but they're pretty much the definitive list for me. Shane's Strokes, Calling in Silence, Confession, Don't Ask, Don't Tell, Last Breath, Undying, Fathomless Maw, Cast from Perfection, Human Condition, and Lilith. Oh yeah, I forgot what I had alluded to earlier. Pretty much their best song is on the Evolve EP, but it's a bonus track. And it's like not even like on Spotify or anything right now. I have to like go find it on YouTube. It's the fucking remix, the re-recorded version of the Human Condition, where they took the pretty intermediate level leads that they played on the original from Desolation of Eden, and Jason Richardson just fucking took them up a notch, made them way more advanced, way more intricate, and the vocals sound great, the music, the rhythm sounds great, the production sounds awesome, and of course the leads are just stepped way the fuck up. Their best song is probably the Human Condition remix from Evolve. And yeah, be sure to comment what you agree or disagree with. Not to create a rift, but do you like Alex or Tom on vocals better? Again, I personally think Tom is the technically better, probably even better live. I just think in terms of what they did in the studio, I think the Alex albums thus far have been better, but I think Tom very much has the opportunity here. And I know it's not just Tom, it's the whole band has gone through members. Like it's kind of a different band now, so there's only like one original member in there now, so it's still fine with me though. They're gonna keep putting out great music, and I'm just kind of glad that I kept an open mind over the years and I haven't missed out on this awesome heavy music that they've put out. So comment what you agree with or disagree with. Again, I've done a lot of these other deathcore bands. I've done Suicide Silence. I've done other death metal bands, Black Dahlia Murder, Amur, Whitechapel. I've done, all that. So check out my Ranked and Reviewed playlist. Comment if there's any particular bands you want to see, and there's a very high chance I won't do it, especially if they're underground. Or I have a list of another 40 bands I want to do. So we'll see if it comes up. But thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting. Thanks for chiming in. And I'll catch you on the next one. Peace!